Hey guys, welcome to the stream tonight. So, I am here discussing a political party that I encountered, and their name is Ontario People's Front. So, some of you are aware that I sent out a letter to multiple political parties. And one of them that got back to me was Ontario People's Front. It's a political party that I've never heard of before. So I thought I'd check out their website and find out what they're all about. I spoke with the leader of the political party already, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about what some of their policies are. So I'm on the website on my computer, and I'm going to go through the policies. And oh, look, Ontario's People's Front just joined the stream. Welcome, Ontario People's Front. So as I said to everyone, it's important to take part in the political process. Your civic duty is very, very, very important. So find the political party or find the independent that appeals to you and work with them. Don't just say, I'm just going to vote. See if you can work with that political party or work with that independent to get them elected. Take part in the process. So, Ontario People's Party. So, on their homepage, I can just show it to you here as well. So, on their homepage, it says, "We're Ontarians in defense of our Canadian Charter of Rights and a just society for all." So you see here, they're actually looking for candidates to become a candidate or become a member. So that's the first thing that appeals to me. I like that, right? So now I'm gonna head. So they have a tab here called Pandemic Declaration. So let's see what it says. So it says here, COVID-19 was genetically engineered by the same evil that now wants you to take their injections, irrespective of how many people are injured or die in the process. There are documented cases of fatalities among young children, yet our children are now being subjugated to a mass injection program that promises to destroy even more lives. So Ontario People's Front they're starting good, already appealing. Number two, the mortality of children from COVID-19 has been extremely negligible. Indeed, the symptoms that children tend to experience, if any, appear to be no more than a cold, which they easily recover from in the same manner. So again, they're doing good so far. So my hands are getting tired. So, number three, they say that the COVID-19 injections are in fact gene therapy devices. Number three, good as well. Number four, they say that unfortunate consequences of COVID, hospitalization accompanying rates of mortality, could have been prevented with early treatment protocols. So, I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you. But so far, it's clear that Ontario's People's Party are fully aware of what's going on, and they understand what would-be voters like us are thinking, and they know the same things that would-be voters like us know. They're aware. What radicals! So guys, welcome to the stream. If you're just joining in, I'm talking about Ontario's People's Front, a political party that I encountered a few, let's say maybe 2 weeks ago. So now I want to talk about what they say their vision and policy agenda are. And they're in the stream watching right now. So if they want to join later on, I'll invite them to join in. Anyone who wants to join the stream and ask any questions, I invite you to come on over. No, so their vision for Ontario is to become second to none in all measures of quality of living, not only in Canada but the world. Injection passports will not support that objective. The proposed multi-billion-dollar investment into such a system violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, squanders critical financial resources, and draws public policy attention away from achieving quality of living goals for all Ontarians that would propel us toward a more just society. So here's number one on their policy list for Ontario People's Party. Number one, support a climate innovation and expansion for small business communities and cultural or artistic organizations as pivotal driving forces of job creation in Ontario. This action includes direct support for visible minorities and First Nation groups. Now I have some questions on this because now I want to know, how would we support a climate innovation? Like how do we support climate innovation and expansion? Are we supporting that using tax dollars? Or are we supporting that I don't know, by via advice to the private market? Like how are we going to be supporting that climate of innovation and expansion for small businesses and for cultural artistic organizations? Because you have to remember that right now there's a bill in the House of Commons, the internet bill, that speaks about trying to favor content towards Canadian creators, but at the same time, the content that they're talking about, the government wants to manipulate that content and decide what it is that you see and what we don't see. So, for example, let's say that you're an artist and or you are a producer and you want to create a show. The government has an input in what you have in that show. So I'm going to need some clarity on policy point number one here. Now, number two, support the rights of independent farmers and farm communities as the backbone of Ontario's rural life and food supply. That's number two. So I don't have any questions there, and the reason why I don't have any questions is because I don't know the background of this in regards to the farmers and farm communities and what they're supporting. So Ontario People's Front just commented and they say they support free speech on the internet, no censorship. Okay. Now, number three, support fair and equitable labor conditions for all Ontarians, including universal access to childcare and mental health support. Now, those of you who follow me on Instagram know that I have a problem with our public healthcare system. I have a big problem with it. And one of the reasons why I have a big problem with it and have always had a big problem with public healthcare systems is that the government has control of it. And the government used the public healthcare system and the fact that we are reliant upon it to try to tell us what to put in our bodies and not what to put in our bodies. The government used the public healthcare system to ban us from traveling, from leaving the country. They used that to force our children to put on masks. The government used that to destroy businesses, to destroy jobs, to discriminate against those who have a different political ideology. So so Six Fluid says, I hear universal in relation to healthcare or childcare education make me go run. Yeah, so that makes me run as well. And that's the honest truth. It makes me run. When I hear universal access to childcare and mental health support, it makes me run, right? And here it is. Not only that, they're teaching kids garbage in school, right? So and this is something that I always argue with not argue with my wife about, but something I say to my wife, that the public education system here, the curriculum changes depending on the political party in power. So the Conservatives come in power and then the curriculum changes. The Liberals come in power, the curriculum changes. The NDP comes in power, the curriculum changes. That's ridiculous. That is entirely ridiculous. That is a broken system, which is why I don't trust the public education system. I don't trust the public healthcare system. I prefer a system that supports school choice and health choice. Sure, if Canadians want to keep the public healthcare system, so Ontario People's Front says universal public healthcare and fascism during the pandemic are separate issues. I'm going to come to that in a second. So let's say that if Canadians want to keep, the public healthcare system or the public education system, I don't have a problem with that. But I think that people should be able to opt out of it, opt out of paying for it, and opt out of taking part in it, in favor of school choice and in favor of health choice. So now we have sort of a parallel economy popping up where I can opt into that economy, because we see where the Quebec government, for example, came out and wanted to tax Quebecois people more monies on top of what they're already paying into the healthcare system, simply because they didn't want to take an injection, right? So now back to Ontario People's Front comment. So public healthcare and fascism during the pandemic are separate issues. So here's the thing. Let's say that and Arcadia, I see your comments, I'm going to come to that too. Let's say that Ontario People's Front is a really amazing political party with really amazing candidates, and they become government, and they provide this amazing universal healthcare system, and this universal childcare system or education or whatever it is. Let's say they come in and they do that, and then the Liberals become government next time around. The same thing is going to happen, because they still have control over the public healthcare system. So because we can have one good leader for 4 years, and then the 4 years after that we get a horrible leader that's going to destroy the amazing system that you built. And that's why this kind of thing is so treacherous, which is why it's important that individuals have choice in what to do, because the government thinks that it can plan from above, plan our lives individually, right? The government thinks it can plan the lives of 30 million Canadians. It's impossible. It is impossible to plan the lives of 30 million Canadians. So people need to have individual choice on what to do, what to opt into, and what to opt out of, right? So that's what I'm thinking here with this one. So I see the Bryson Lee says schools are meant to create smoke and mirrors for children to believe, essentially creating clothes. Yes, so the public education system as it is right now, it's designed to spit out workers. It's not designed to spit out thinkers and entrepreneurs and creators and so on and so forth. It's designed to spit out people to work for the elites, or work for corporations and so on and so forth. And so Arcadia was saying private schools in Ontario are expensive. And we know why it's expensive. It's expensive because these private schools are competing against free. We know it's not free. Education is not free. Healthcare is not free, because we pay for it out of our taxes, and the government uses loans and so on and so forth to pay for these systems. So private schools are expensive because they're competing with public quote unquote free schools, right? So that is why it's expensive. If you had a freer market and less regulations, with more people able to create elementary schools or create high schools or create colleges, because remember, it's the government here that's controlling the colleges and the universities. They're funding these things as well. If you had a freer market, a freer education market, education would cost much less. Because look at it right now. Ontario universities, or Canadian universities, and American universities as well, are preventing individuals, students, from completing their studies simply because they did not take the injection. And that is the trouble I have with these so-called public health care and public education systems. Government control, I just don't trust it, right? Let me see if I had any comment here. People prioritize bringing your kids home. I give up a good career and pinch down our lifestyle so we could educate our kids at home. And I came across a website that was selling books to children's books that helps them to understand what's going on in the world. And the children's books are designed to counter what children learn in the public education system. So that's a good move. And I was saying to myself that, so apparently the Toronto District School Board is thinking about keeping mask mandates for children, even though the province is dropping them. So I said to my wife this morning that if my school board, that's Simcoe District School Board, if my school board decides that they're going to keep masks even though the province dropped it, I'm pulling my kid out of school. And that's a decision that I made. But then I got an email this evening from the school saying that the masks are going to be optional. And I'm fine with that. My son is not going to school with any mask on. So Irina says, I enjoyed school when I was younger. When I wasn't skipping classes, I was a teacher till all this started. I was already 1 foot out the door before the mandates because it's become a factory. Yeah. So Ontario's People Front says, universal public healthcare merely ensures that everyone can get access to healthcare irrespective of the size of their bank accounts. Hey, so I understand what you're saying. So I would offer a different option to universal public health care, because let's say let's just use Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is a wealthy person, right? Should Justin Trudeau, a wealthy person, and his family have access to a universal public health care system? He can afford it. He can afford to pay for his health care, or he can afford to pay for his education. Why should somebody that wealthy have access to a quote-unquote free system that's supposed to be designed to help people in need? Do you get what I'm saying? So my alternative to this, sorry, my computer froze here. Let me pull up the website. Yeah, my alternative to this is to create a system that only helps those who are needed. But at the same time, we can't keep the public healthcare system. We have to divest it, and we have to allow private competition, and we have to allow doctors, we have to allow hospitals to vie for patients, right? I have to be able to say that I don't like the doctor in Toronto, so I'm going to go to the doctor in Brampton. And when the doctor in Toronto realizes that he's not getting any patients, then he's going to have to up the quality of his service, or he's going to have to reduce the cost of his service. He's going to have to do something to attract customers to his office, right? And my alternative to a universal public healthcare system is to only create a safety net designed for people who really need it. But you can't have this the safety net be a free for all, because we have to understand that money, my money doesn't grow on trees, right? Your money doesn't grow on trees. You work hard for it. So I want to know that any monies that I work hard for and are taxed, it is not being wasted. So the individuals who are receiving these benefits because they don't work enough funds, or they're disabled, or they're sick, and so on and so forth, they have to understand that the funds that they're receiving is not free money, and these funds have to be accounted for. Don't want to go into too much detail with it, but I hope you guys get what I'm trying to say. So Douglas is saying, good for you, that is total worth of stock. Oh, that was to somebody else. So Ontario People's Front again is saying, in the United States, without universal public health care, millions of people don't have access to health care and are unable to get medical treatment they need. And the funny thing about that, apparently the United States spends more money on health care than any other country in the world. But I think I explained my alternative to a universal public health care system. So the Bryson Lee says, yep, create further depth so that the system fails for individuals. Yeah. So when you have a universal public health care system, you're funding everybody for no reason at all, right? And then I've been in this country for 8 years, and of the 8 years, I've only used the hospital 0 times. I've only used the hospital 0 times. The only time my family has used the hospital is when my wife went to give birth to our 2 children. That's the only time, right? So I always joke around and I ask, so since I'm not using the healthcare system, my wife isn't using it, my children are not using it, most Canadians aren't using it, we're not overburdening the system, where is our money going? What is our money doing? And in Parliament the other day, provincial Parliament, the health minister stood up and said that 800 Canadians in the ICU basically crashes the healthcare system. That clearly shows me that they're not running the healthcare system properly and they're not using the funds properly. Let me see, how many people are in Ontario? Let me see, Ontario population. Ontario population is 14.57 million people, and 800 persons in the healthcare system, in the ICU, crashes the healthcare system. Yet the healthcare system, I think it's the I think it has the highest budget in the country, and then the education system after. I can't remember. It's one of them, education or health, right? And they actually have to take out loans to maintain the public healthcare system in Ontario. So what are they doing? What is costing so much money when the majority of the 14.57 million Canadians are not using the healthcare system? Okay, so Ripping for Freedom said, my wife was in university when the pandemic started and has not been allowed to come back, right? If there was no universal public healthcare, government could still have injection mandates. Yeah, they could still have injection mandates. It's just that they wouldn't be able to use the powers of public health to enforce it. Because remember, government decides how many doctors we have. They decide how many nurses we have. They decide if a doctor if a doctor can prescribe ivermectin. They decide if a doctor can't say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and if a doctor says that, the doctor gets fired. So the doctors can't speak out against the public healthcare system because the public healthcare system employs the doctor. So there's a big conflict of interest there. There's no medical freedom in a government-run public healthcare system. Have you seen the plan some teachers are suggesting for having a mask or non-mask segregation in classroom? No, I have not seen that, and that is sad. I did not see that. Jordan, what's Bill 67? In the United States, they already have that kind of system, and it only works for wealthy people. So the United States only works for wealthy people. The United States does have sort of a public healthcare system. You know, they have publicly run hospitals. What I'm saying is that I don't think that the government should be running hospitals. And I don't think that the government should have these intense regulations over the healthcare system, because it's those regulations that are causing the expense in the system, and it's the government running the healthcare systems or public health and so on and so forth that's causing the medical tyranny across the world. That is what's causing it. So what I'm saying is that we need to have a freer healthcare system where people can choose where to go and where not to go. And what the government does, instead of running the healthcare system, so let's say that I am somebody in need. I lost my job. I don't have any insurance. And by the way, insurance is a very important part. So when I don't have any insurance, I get sick, I can't afford healthcare. What I don't need is to go to a free public healthcare system. What I need is to go to the healthcare, the hospital of my choice, and then for the government to cover that cost. But I need to be made aware that that money does not come to me for free. It had to that money costs money, and it costs time, right? Because the money that I'm taking is Ontario People's Front money. It's F. Doza's money here. It's Michelle's money, right? So there has to be a limit. If there is no limit, it's a free-for-all. The government is just giving out money left, right, and center. There has to be a limit. Without limit, we have massive inflation. We have massive public debt. The government has no extra monies in its purse for emergencies. and the government doesn't have any money for emergencies. All they do is print money, which which increases inflation and steals our savings and steals our earnings. Because if you think about it, if the government was not stealing the value of our savings and our earnings all of this time, maybe, just maybe, $50,000 in 2014 could probably be worth $55,000 today, right? Because $100,000 today is was valued probably around, I don't know, maybe $50,000 like 10 years ago or whatever it is. Inflation, right? So we need to be able to keep the value of our earnings and the value of our savings. Michelle says, but then it would end up scaling back, and many will not have access to that. On paper, family income may look great, but true financial institutions may be different. So what happens to that? So I don't understand the question, and but you don't bring up an important point in there, because right now, because of the fact that myself and my wife, our incomes are combined, the government taxes us differently. The government looks us like it's ridiculous, right? They don't look at us as individuals; they look at us as a unit. So they tax us together, and because of that, they tax us a lot more than they would an individual or a single family or a single parent family, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people do suffer from this kind of public healthcare system. Okay, so I'm gonna go through only Ontario People's Front comments, because I want to jump to the next point. When you have two-tier system, the rich people get excellent healthcare and the poor get ishy healthcare. But here's the thing, Ontario People's Front, we are all getting shitty healthcare. Right now, we're all getting shitty healthcare, and the rich can still get excellent healthcare. They can. All they have to do is jump on their $10,000 private jet, fly to America, fly to Switzerland, or fly to wherever they want to go to get their excellent healthcare. And we are stuck here with the shitty healthcare, and we're in the hospital hallways, trying to get healthcare, right? So it's it's crazy. So I'm gonna go. Let me see if Ontario's People Front has any more. Please come onto the live so we can articulate this. Yeah, you guys can come on the live. So if you want to send a request, you can come on the live. I sent you the plan for segregation in the classroom for. Okay, good. I'm definitely with you. This is a problem. Never consider government control is a problem. Medical tyranny has nothing to do with public health care. Medical tyranny is the result of emergency public health measures. Universal public health care is the Health Canada Act. You're mixing up emergency public health care measures and access to health care. Okay. Imagine Ontario's 1,000 times better than Quebec. When I lived there, I couldn't believe it. Literally couldn't access to a doctor. Okay. Okay, so Ontario People's Party, if you want to jump on the live, you can do that. But you have to send me a request. I can't. I tried to send it just now, but I can't. So I'm going to move on to point 4. Point 4 is re-empower doctor-patient relations in the fight against COVID-19 and to make unlawful any organization in the province of Ontario that seeks to coerce anyone to take a COVID-19 jab. Now, I'm okay with that. But here's the thing. Number 4 and number 3 kind of collides. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If in number 3, we support the government controlling the healthcare system, and then in number 4, we say that we're going to re-empower doctor-patient relations in the fight against COVID-19, what assurance is there that the same government in point number 3 that's running the public healthcare system doesn't come back and take away that doctor-patient relationship again? And this is what I'm trying to point out, because government will always try to push the envelope. They always try to push the envelope. right? And that's what I'm worried about. But I do support number 4, empowering doctor-patient relationship in the fight against COVID-19. Because I do support informed consent, and the doctor's first responsibility is to the patient in front of him or her. The doctor's first responsibility is not the public. It's not government. It is the person in front of him or her. For those who are just joining the stream, I'm just reading through the policies of the Ontario People's Front political party. So now, number 5, ensure anyone who takes the job has access to information on any risk and dangers associated with taking it. Good. Number 6, require all Ontario public health authorities to provide information on how to build their immunity in the fight against COVID-19 and ensure that anyone who contracts COVID-19 has immediate access to safe and effective early treatment protocols to prevent hospitalization. So I agree with this. In theory and in practice. However, I would want to see doctors more empowered. So back to point number 4, where we say re-empower doctor-patient relations. I would want to see number 6 saying that it is going to not just point towards requiring Ontario public health authorities to provide information, but allowing medical doctors to do what they were trained to do and get government out of it. Get government out of the doctor-patient relationship. When I go to a doctor's office, I don't want to see the government there. I don't want to see Justin Trudeau there. I don't want to see Jagmeet Singh. I don't want to see Doug Ford. I don't want to see any politician in the office when I go visit my doctor, right? So I want to get the government out of medical decisions that's supposed to be made between a doctor and a patient. Government tyranny and COVID is happening all over the world, even in countries with private driven healthcare systems. So the country that has the most private driven healthcare system would be Singapore and Sweden. But even those 2 countries have a strong public health system that oversees the entirety of the healthcare system. So private driven healthcare systems wouldn't necessarily be subject to government tyranny, right? So for example, in America, they say the healthcare system is private. Well, it's not really private. It's privately, some of them are privately run or operated, but they still have to adhere to the intense regulations of the government. So it's kind of a fascist system there. So remember, I was talking to you guys about fascism. It's kind of a fascist system there. So even though you have a private healthcare system, if the government says jump, it has to jump. And if it doesn't jump, it gets shut down. And if the doctors don't do what the government tells them to do, the doctors, College of Physicians and Surgeons, sanctions the doctors, right? Or fire the doctors, or fine the doctors, right? Okay. So number 7, expand Ontario health insurance plan to include naturopathic and homeopathic. I hope I'm pronouncing homeopathic doctors to ensure that all Ontarians can avail themselves of immunity boosting information for their well-being. I can't comment on that one because I am not that knowledgeable about this part. So number 8, champion a quality of living Bill of Rights. Champion a quality of living Bill of Rights for Ontario based upon public consultation to serve as a blueprint to eradicate involuntary homelessness, ensure timely provision of universal healthcare services for all, ensure excellent conditions for all seniors living in extended care facilities, regardless of their ability to pay, and safeguard our environment. from pollution that threatens the health of human and other biological species. This includes access to safe drinking water, clean water, and the monitoring of the effects of EMF, radio wave pollution on our biological species. Before I comment on that, let me see what DG13 is saying. Public health care is deeply flawed, but I agree, not the source of medical tyranny. The source is political. But that's what I'm trying to say, though. If politicians oversee the public healthcare system, how can it not be political? Public health has to be political because politicians run it. Do you get what I'm saying? Politicians make decisions on the fly, whimsical decisions. Look at what's going on in BC. Public health dragging their feet on masks and these injection mandates, right? Politicians run healthcare systems. Doug Ford is not a doctor. Doug Ford doesn't have a medical degree. He doesn't, right? Sure, the public health individuals, and sometimes in some cases the healthcare minister does, but at the end of the day, the decision comes down to the politician. And here's the thing as well. You have the Pfizer, you have the Johnson & Johnson, you have the AstraZeneca, you have these people in the ears of the politician. They're whispering in their ears and saying, hey, doggy, I need you to invest this in Pfizer. Hey, doggy, I need you to mandate this. Hey, Trudeau, I need you to ban people from traveling, from leaving the country, because I want them to come get my products, to increase the Pfizer injection intake, to increase the Novavax intake. You have these lobbyists whispering in the ears of politicians, telling them what to do with the healthcare system, what to do with the education system, and not what to do with it. So the public healthcare system cannot help but to be political. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we're saying. So one city said public health is political. The politicians let them go with their data, but they work for government, right? So even with overwhelming evidence, politicians, they claim they listen to the science, but they're listening to the political science. They're not listening to the medical science. And then you have this thing called the Ontario Science Table, right? I don't know what kind of science these guys are using, what kind of data, but it goes back to what I said earlier. A government cannot expect to control the lives of 30 million people, or in the case of Ontario, what is it? What did I say? 10 million people, 14.5 million people, right? You can't plan the lives of every single individual. So persons are going to need autonomy to do what they need to do with their lives. And that is how we reduce the size of government, and we reduce the cost of government, and we reduce political influence in our lives. Politicians are not architects of the pandemic. I agree. The politicians are not the architects of the pandemic, but the individuals whispering in their ears are. That's why I said that, Ontario People's Party could become government and become the best government and fix everything. It could be Roman Baber, it could be the New Blue, it could be the Conservative, whoever it is, comes and becomes the best government we've ever seen. But then you get voted out. The Liberals come back in. The NDP come back in. The Greens come back in. What are you going to do? Because now Pfizer is going to whisper in their ear again. Rockefeller Foundation is going to whisper in their ear again. The World Economic Forum is going to whisper in their ears again. The UN, IMF, World Bank, the US President, they're going to whisper in their ears again, and they're going to break the system again. It's a cycle. It's a cycle over and over and over again. And even if you strengthen the controls, right? Let's say you strengthen the control. Let's say it's a bank, and you strengthen the controls, right, to prevent certain things from happening. What we've seen is that over time, politicians have been able to reduce the effects or the powers of those controls. One of the biggest controls that was put in place was the Charter of Rights. But over time, politicians have been able to dilute the power of the Charter of Rights. They can do it, and they will do it eventually. It just takes time, and it takes a little bit of propaganda. It takes a little bit of brainwashing. And guess what? They control the public education system. So brainwashing, no problem. We'll just wait for the next generation to become voters. We brainwash them and say, hey, this is good, this is bad. And when they become voters, then they vote in this horrible system and destroy everything that Ontario People's Front did, and destroy everything that the New Blue did, destroy everything that the others did, right? There's a cycle here that we have to understand, right? Now, Big Pharma would run our hospital if we didn't have universal public health care. Big Pharma would only run our hospitals if the government allows them to. Remember, it is the government the government right now who is selecting who runs the hospital. The government selecting who's a doctor, who's a nurse, A, B, C, and D. Now, if a doctor graduates from college into a private healthcare system, this doctor can start his own office. This doctor can come together with other doctors and build a hospital. Right now, because of, for example, the censorship on social media, because we're censored on Instagram and censored on Facebook, you find free speech platforms popping up, right? You find the Rumble, you find the Getter, you find the Parler, and all that stuff. In the healthcare system, when Ontario People's Front at DG13 realizes that Big Pharma is running the hospital in Barrie, you know what's going to happen? And if doctors are free to do it, a doctor is going to build a hospital across from that hospital in Barrie and say, hey, this one is not run by Big Pharma. This one here is designed to actually help you and not to poison you with Big Pharma toxic products. As a matter of fact, these kinds of individuals already exist. There are people out there who are opposed to some of Big Pharma's toxic medicine, and they're proposing healthier options. They're there. The government just needs to allow them to be more accessible to people, right? I think public health is just the framework. The people within public health can be politicized and corrupted, but that doesn't mean the framework is unjust. So I always say this. It is not so socialism on its own, it's fine. Communism on its own, it's fine. Fascism on its own, it's fine. But then you have the people component. When the people component comes into socialism, hell breaks loose. When the people component comes into communism, hell breaks loose. People die. When the people component comes into fascism, Hitler is born. Hitler goes, kills Jews, commits all kind of atrocities against Jews, right? When the people component is added to that framework of public healthcare, that political component, that is when it becomes corrupt. But the framework cannot operate without the human input. So what you need is a system that can work without that overall centrally controlled human component, which is why I keep repeating that a government cannot hope to continue planning the lives of 30 million Canadians. We need the individual to decide what framework to choose, to decide what framework to exist in voluntarily, right? Okay, so that's the life of a democracy, though. So a democracy, get me started on the democracy. Listen, guys, this is something that you're not going to hear from anybody else. But a democracy in the context that we know it, it's not a good thing. Do you know why? Because in a democracy, the majority can vote to enslave the minority. Just like what happened last year in November when the Prime Minister ran on a campaign to ban uninjected Canadians from traveling on planes and trains, and to ridicule them and to call them Nazi. He ran on a divisive, evil, wicked campaign, and people voted for that. People voted to take your rights away. That is a democracy, and that is how democracies work, which is why I always advocate for what me and my friends in Jamaica, the UIC, calls our true republic. In a true republic, the majority cannot vote to enslave the minority. The individual is sovereign. My right to life, my right to liberty, my right to property is guaranteed, and the only way you can take any one of those three is if I infringe on your life, your liberty, your property. That is the only way. If I'm walking on the street and I hurt you, you have every right to defend yourself. So if I'm threatening your life, you have every right to defend yourself. And if I die, it's just so it goes. If I go out there and I hurt somebody or I'll kill somebody, the government has every right to put me in jail because I infringed on your right to life, liberty, or property. But in my world, in my republic, that I would like to see, if the government itself infringes on your right to life, your right to liberty, your right to property, you have a right to resist and to defend yourself. And the politicians in power that's doing it, they must be held accountable. If the government infringes on the rights of even a single citizen, that must be defined as treason, because I see the individual as sovereign, not a queen, not a king, not a prime minister, not a president. The individual must be sovereign. If the individual is not sovereign, that means the individual is a slave. Also, Aquarius. So I am going through Ontario People's Front. Ontario People's Front is our political party in Canada. They're getting registered right now. I don't think they're registered yet. You can update me on that, Ontario People's Front, in the comments to let me know how far you've gotten in the registration process. So I'm going through their policies and we're having a discussion about their policies, as well as we're kind of veering off into different things because we're talking in the comments as well. Right? So Van City is saying, isn't the pharma telling what doctors they can and can't prescribe now? Yeah, they are. Well, it's not Big Pharma telling them. Big Pharma is telling the politicians, who tells public health, who tells the doctor what to prescribe and what not to prescribe. Oh, they'll whisper hard. Hopefully our MDs remember the pandemic. The one, maybe not. All right. So what's the alternative? So the comments is I'm kind of slow on the comments. So are you alternative to public health or alternative to the democracy? Which one are we talking about? Let me scroll. You can't have a healthcare system serving millions of people on a principle of anarchy. No, it's not anarchy. Some organized group has to run it, and it will either be a government or a big pharma. No, I don't think that's not true. That's not true. It's not anarchy, and it's not. So public health can exist, right? But I don't want public health to exist as a form of force. Public health is supposed to exist as a form, in a way that it gives advice, right? It lets you know that based on the research, and this government sanctioned research, eating an apple 3 times a day is good for you. But how public health operates right now is that they want to take an apple and force it in your mouth and tell you to eat it, and if you don't eat it, they're gonna shut down your bank accounts, and they're gonna destroy your lives. Public health is not supposed to be built on force, right? Public health must be a voluntary thing. It must be built where government gives advice. That's how I'm looking at this thing here. No, we should not get. So here's the thing. Democracy as a full political system is dangerous because it allows the majority to enslave the minority. Where we need democracy is in our electoral process, but we need a republic in terms of how the government manages society. We need good governance within a republic, but we need democracy within our electoral system. A democracy within the electoral system allows the majority to decide who becomes government. But we don't want that in the model of good governance, because then people can vote to enslave the minority. We want a republic, a true republic. Russia is not a true republic. It is not. Right now at this point in time, there are no true republics on this planet Earth. China, Korea, they can all call themselves a republic all they want to call themselves. They are not republics. The United States was supposed to be a republic. It was designed to be a republic. But it didn't go that way because, as I said, that politicians have a way of destroying the controls that were put together by individuals seeking to put an end to corruption. American politicians degraded the U.S. Charter of Rights. They degraded the U.S. Constitution until they fell right now into a fascist state. The United States has fallen to become a fascist state. And that's because politicians are very good at manipulating and degrading the controls that are in place within a so-called democracy, because they are able to trick people to vote for things that remove those controls. Right? Truckers and working classes treated badly in Canada. I think I'm way behind. So Ontario People's Front said that they're reviewing applications from candidates at the present time. So if you're interested in being a candidate for the Ontario People's Front political party, so you can type your website. Type your website in the chat so that people can know where to go. So it's OntarioPeoplesFront.ca. If you're interested in becoming a candidate with them, you can head to their website and sign up. So I'm going to try to scroll all the way down. No, there are no true republics because so how do I say this? There are no true republics because if true republics existed, politicians won't have power. What politician in power right now would want to see a true republic? None. Because it would degrade the power that they have. Because in a true republic, it is the individual who has sovereignty over him or herself. Right? In a true republic, the majority cannot vote to enslave the minority. For example, right now, there are bills in Parliament. For example, you have the hate speech bill in Parliament, you have the internet bill in Parliament, and you have the other bill, the political ideology bill. That's the one from the Conservative who is saying that he wants to add political ideology to the list of prohibited things that you can discriminate against, right? So he wants to add that to the list. Right? Because, the government has been discriminating against people based on their political ideology. So, we have to understand that if, for example, Justin Trudeau stands up tomorrow and says that, you know what? Canadians don't deserve the right to property. We shouldn't have property. Lots of communists in Canada says it. They say it, that we shouldn't have property rights. The government should own property. We shouldn't have property rights. Justin Trudeau can stand up in Parliament, right? Let's say he calls an election and runs on that platform, a platform that we must not have property rights. A majority of Canadians can vote for Justin Trudeau to do that, and to go into the Charter of Rights. Of course, in the House of Commons, they have to pass the bill. Go into the Charter of Rights and remove anything that has to do with property rights, or security of the person rights, or mobility rights. Right now, we're fighting for our mobility rights. So, the government, with the support of a majority of the population, can open up the Charter of Rights, take a big red pen and draw a line through mobility rights. That is democracy. And that is dangerous. What I'm advocating for is instead a republic where the individual's rights, my right to life, my right to liberty, my right to property, are my sovereign rights, which cannot be infringed upon by government or by person. In a democracy, we give the government a power of force to steal, to kill, etc. The government has a monopoly on force to do that, because there is a bill in Parliament for, of course you're aware, universal basic income. And I call universal basic income theft, because it is. You're taking from one person to give to another. Just because it's government that's doing it doesn't mean it's theft. Can I leave my house and go to all 500 houses in the scheme and say, you know what, I need a better lifestyle, so I'm going to go into everybody's house and I'm going to take up 2 laptops, and I'm going to sell those laptops on the market because I want a better standard of living. I'm stealing. But yet still, the government, people can give the government authority to do these things. The government right now, at this moment in time, is trying to steal $10 million from Give Send Go. The government is saying that all you crazy Freedom Convoy protesters that donated to Give Send Go, that money is no longer yours, and I, Mr. Government, I am going to take that money and redistribute it as I please. That is theft, government or not. Okay, so I'm going to jump to okay, I don't think I addressed point number 8. Champion equality of living bill of rights for Ontario based. Hey Suzette, how you doing? For Ontario based upon public consultation to serve as a blueprint to eradicate involuntary homelessness. So I'm gonna need some clarifications on that one as well. It's good to have those ideals, but since we know there's no chance Canada is going to immediately become that kind of republic, how do we immediately deal with the current New World Order agenda? I'm glad you asked. But should I get into that right now, or should I continue going through your policies? Should I? Which one should I do? Okay, let me read number 10. So number 10 says, ensure. So for those of you who are just joining, no, I would not vote for Pierre. I would vote for Roman. So I am going through Ontario People's Front.ca's website right now. They're a political party in Ontario that's going to be contesting the next election in June. Yes, the Give Send Go is trying to refund to everyone, but be careful though, because the government might intercept it. So be careful. Yeah. So I'm reviewing Ontario People's Front policies here on their website. I'm telling you what I think about it, being straightforward, what I think about them. So far, most of what I see, I like. But here's the thing. You are never ever going to like every single policy of a political party. Never. So if you think that you're going to find a political a candidate or a political party that you agree with 100%, forget about it. You will not find that, because you have to understand that everybody has diverse views. Because you see here in the live, I have different views for public health and education than Ontario People's Front, right? But it's not that I don't mean well, and it's not that they don't mean well. It's just that we have a difference of opinion. But it doesn't mean that we must disregard each other completely, because we will never ever agree 100% of the time, right? Okay, so the quality. Okay, yeah. So that's something that that can be addressed. I don't know if any of my UIC people are here. I don't know if any of my UIC people are here. Just drop a comment. Let me know if you're here. Yeah. So how I would address the quality of life situation would be the same way I would address the healthcare and education system for those who can't afford it. Some sort of a safety net. Okay. Ensure all Ontario schools enforce an environment free of systematic. Okay, I think I skipped over something. Okay, number 9. Champion human rights mechanisms that actually work. The Ontario Human Rights Commission is completely under-resourced and totally ineffective as a deterrent and a punitive mechanism for complaints to receive redress for human rights infringements. Organizations that practice systematic discrimination create economically disadvantaged and marginalized communities and areas of social despair, resulting in cultures of violent crime, substance abuse, and mental illness. This in turn leads to unnecessary drains on public resources in both healthcare services and policing, in addition to the basic infringement of rights. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna post this one in the chat. Let me see if my phone's gonna allow me to copy from my computer. I want to post this one so that you guys can see it. Nope. My phone's not allowing me to copy and paste. So again, if you're just joining, I'm going through Ontario People's Front policies. They are Ontario political party. So I'm going to be honest with you with number 9. Number 9 is so as I said, I understand what you're trying to do. It's coming from a good place. As a matter of fact, I agree with the line that says the Ontario Human Rights Commission is completely under-resourced and totally ineffective as a deterrent and a punitive measure for complaints to receive redress for a human rights infringement. I agree with that line, because right now there's a bill in Parliament to modify the Human Rights Code to add political ideology, and some of my friends here are saying that we need to add medical choice to the Human Rights Code as well. But here's the thing: if we can just add medical choice, if we can add political ideology to the Human Rights Code, it must mean that we can readily go into the Human Rights Code and remove things as well. And that's what I have a problem with in this thing called democracy, right? Where you can go in and just change things at will, of course, in the House of Parliament with a majority vote from the members in the House. And that is what is scary. Sure, in the current context of today, I support adding political ideology and medical choice to the list of human rights in the country. I do support that. But in theory or in practicality, you're going to find, if you think about it, a next government could possibly come on board and remove those rights, right? So let me see again. So champion human rights enforcement mechanism that actually work. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, because we have to be very, very careful about that, about how we champion human rights enforcement mechanism, because then we have what we call a pre-crime bill in Parliament, an Ontario People's Front. Let me know what you think about this pre-crime bill in Parliament that Justin Trudeau wants to put back in Parliament. Sorry, it's not there. The bill died, but he wants to revive the bill in Parliament. So basically, they defined what hate is. Do I have the bill? No, I don't think I have the bill here. So they defined what hate is. They gave a definition, and they're saying that if a person feels like somebody hates them and might act on that hate, then that person can make a complaint to a judge, and then that judge can bring that person in front of the court, and if the judge believes that this person can harm person A or whatever it is, then the judge can send that person into I can't recall what the name is, but it's sort of a like a home arrest thing where the government tells you where to go and where not to go. Something about keeping the peace, so they can tell you to do it for 6 months or a year, or they can send you to prison if you don't do it. And this is all without you committed a crime. And this is in the pretext of enforcing human rights, of dealing with hate in Canada, right? So we have to be careful with what we define as these enforcement mechanisms. I think we should probably define that in number 9. The next point you have is that okay, so Ontario People's Front doesn't support the pre-crime bill. Good. Organizations that practice systematic discrimination, create economical disadvantage, and marginalize communities and areas of social despair. So this is something that I've always had a problem. Yeah. Yes. You're right, Ontario People's Front. You're right. Definitely. So this is something I've always had a problem with. Systematic discrimination. How do we define that? How do we define systematic discrimination, and how do we address it? Because I've said multiple times that discrimination is human nature. I love purple. Right? I have purple, I'm wearing a purple shirt. I have purple in my bio. This is my company's logo here, and it's purple, right? Purple is my color, right? Even my book. So this is my book, my sample book, Big Bear Wish. Purple, right? That's my color, purple. I love purple, right? And I pick purple over another color, and that's my basic discrimination. I love women, right? I don't like men. That's my basic discrimination. Another person might like men, might not like women, whatever it is. That's their basic discrimination. I prefer a black woman over a white woman. That's my discrimination. Another person might prefer a white woman over a black man, or whatever it is. That's their discrimination. But the thing is, I think that's fine. If somebody makes a decision about what they like, about what they want to choose, I think that's fine. Yes, it is discrimination, but it's not the kind of discrimination that we think about, for example, where somebody would say to somebody that, hey, you're black, or you're gay, or you're Russian, or you're Ukrainian, or you're African, so I don't want you to work here. Of course, we don't want to see that in society, but it is there. It does exist, and we see it every single day. For example, right now there's a young man, 20-year-old Russian, who's been banned from playing in one of those events. I can't recall what it is, simply because he is Russian, and it is allowed to happen, right? So discrimination does happen. So when we say that organizations that practice systematic discrimination, we have to try to determine what the definition of this discrimination is that meets this idea of what systematic discrimination is. Because remember, you have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that is actually designed to fight systematic discrimination. Because now what the United Nations is trying to do is say to governments that in parliament you have to have this amount of women, this amount of men, this amount of indigenous people, this amount of African Canadians, this amount of Asians, this amount of Europeans in your cabinet, or if you have a corporation on your board of directors, and if you don't have that, you will get fined. That is how the United Nations is trying to address systematic discrimination. So this is something that I'm very wary of, and it is something that we have to be very careful about, because very, very soon, when, for example, in my home country, Jamaica, with the Prime Minister now promoting his central bank digital currency from the international banking cabal, and he's trying to bribe Jamaicans with 20 Canadian dollars to sign up to give their freedoms away. This guy is basically setting up the country for those United Nations Sustainable Development Goals right now. So when a corporation decides that no, I am going to be hiring persons based on their ability to do the job, then this company is going to be punished for doing that. Because the company is going to say, oh man, I like this person so much, but I can't hire this person because he's not black, he's not white, he's not Asian, he's not LGBTQ, he's not indigenous. And there are states right now in the US that are actually doing this. Look at California. Systematic discrimination is a pattern of denying people economic or educational opportunities simply because of their race. Yeah, so my question is this now, Ontario People's Front. How is that done? So I am not going to sit here and try to say that other people's experiences do not matter, because they don't. What other people experience, I might not necessarily experience that, because, for example, I know for a fact that indigenous societies, indigenous groups, indigenous communities, nations within this country are systematically discriminated against, right? And the reason for that is because they're under this, what do you call it, the Indian Act for, I still don't know why the hell an Indian Act still exists and why the hell it's called an Indian Act. These people are not Indians. India is in Asia. Right? India is in Asia. Right? I know how Indians look, and they don't look like Indians. Right? So systematic discrimination does exist there. But I see a pattern of the government talking about systematic discrimination when it comes to people who look like me, people who are black, people who are from Caribbean communities, people who are the original African Canadians, who came up, the descendants of them who came up from the US and settled in Nova Scotia and so on and so forth. We see these things every day about the systematic discrimination that black Canadians face in the country. However, I don't see, and again, as I say, I'm not trying to reduce the experience of others, but since being here for the past 8 years, mingling with other people, talking, taking part in economy, taking part in society, I don't see where there is systematic discrimination that is preventing me from taking part in the economy, that is preventing me from accessing educational opportunities because of my race. I just don't see it. On the other hand, when I came to this country, I had more opportunities than I could ever dream of. The opportunities that I have in this country, I did not have in Jamaica. Right? So again, individuals living here for a very long time might have a different experience than me. So why not try to find out what is different about persons like me? I don't know, maybe immigrants coming to this country who are from Caribbean nations. Try to find out what is different between me and the individual who is facing that economic or educational discrimination that's preventing them from having the life that they need, and try to see if we can possibly replicate that in that group of persons who are who we claim are experiencing that systematic discrimination, right? And I'm just talking here, right? Why are Jamaicans pushing back, or is it? So I don't want to get, Jamaicans are pushing back, but I don't want to get too much. I know what you're going to say, Ontario peoples, right? I know what you're going to say. As I said before, people have different experiences, and I don't want to put down the experiences of others. For example, let's use Jane and Finch area that I'm familiar with. Let's use Jane and Finch area, where you have some community housing, and you have varied violence in some of these communities, right? Gun violence. I see one of the Ontario MPPs. No, I didn't say it's a figment of the imagination. No, I am not saying it's a figment. It does exist. I'm just talking about the manner in which we go about dealing with it, right? The manner in which we go about dealing with it is usually force, using government force. That's what I'm talking about, right? So, in some of these communities, they try to use some of these government controls or whatever it is that they have to try to assist persons in these groups. But every single time that they try to do that, it's almost as if they make the situation worse. And it's not just in Canada, it's in Jamaica as well. And Jamaica is a majority black community. It happens in Jamaica where the government tries to implement some of these same ideologies and controls in Canada, and it only makes the situation worse. And I think this is why I come from a different perspective, because I see, because I see coming from Jamaica, I see the realities there, and I come here and I see things from a different lens, from a different views about how we could actually fix some of these problems. So you say you can tell nightmare stories of black people who are members of parliament. I'm sure there are nightmare stories, but are there nightmare stories that you can that are described as systematic discrimination, preventing them from accessing the economy or accessing education? Like how bad is it? How bad is it that it needs government force? The force. Remember, the force of the government is no plaything, right? The government has a monopoly on force. It's not a joke. How bad is it that we need government force? Suzette is set up so you can never do better. If you are on welfare, you can't get up. So I would argue that a lot of the things that the government is doing, where we define as systematic racism, where persons who are black, indigenous, are from minority groups are failing in society due to these policies, I see other groups failing to these policies as well. And I don't think, how do I explain it? Okay, let's use tax. Let's use the tax laws, for example. The tax laws are very discriminatory, where somebody like me who's working a 9 to 5, right? I earn a paycheck. The government taxes me before I get my salary. But somebody who owns a business, who's an entrepreneur, or somebody, or maybe the owner of Walmart, maybe the owner of a corner shop, it doesn't matter. That person gets to spend the money before they are taxed. No, this is something I'm going to tell you straight, right? My community, black people, generally do not understand how money works, how taxes work. We don't have that sort of a system where we have families down the line who educate us on how to invest, how to start businesses. We don't have that kind of a society where other groups, Asians, Europeans, your father, your grandfather, and so on and so forth, might have had a head start in society and are able to pass down some knowledge to you so that you do better in society. For people like me, we didn't really have that because our parents don't understand how money works. They run business, but they don't understand exactly how to run the business properly so that they could expand and build empires and build wealth. It is just now this generation, Suzette's generation, my generation, my wife's generation, my friends, it is our generations now who are actually starting to pass on that knowledge now to our children. And in passing down that knowledge to our children are now able to pass that knowledge down to their children. Right? So here's what Suzette is saying. Our parents were just trying to survive. And it's true. Or in Jamaica, God, the generation before us they were just trying to survive. And I come here and I see the same pattern. Just trying to survive, and it gets so difficult. We don't have the time to sit down with our children and say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to start a business. I'm going to teach you how to invest into real estate. I'm going to teach you how to invest in stocks. I'm going to teach you how to the skill, right? We generally don't have the time because we're working 9 to 5, both parents. Some of them are working 16-hour shifts, some of them 24-hour shifts. I talked to one of my brethren yesterday. One of my brethren, he works in Alberta. He works for 6 months out of the year away from his family. When can he get the time to pass down the required knowledge to his children? And that is the problem. And as a black man, I am telling you, that is the problem that we face in the black community, where our parents didn't have the know-it-all to pass on the knowledge to us. But now we are being awakened to the reality of what's going on. We're reading books like we're reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad. We're reading books like Money People Deal. We're reading, where's my other one? Right? We're reading these books now. So it is now, this generation, within less than the last decade, that we're waking up to how the world really is. Because it's almost as if before this we were living in some kind of a loop, some kind of a weird dream world that we were trapped in. And when we read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, a light bulb turns on in our minds and we say, oh my God, we've been lied to all our lives. Because our parents told us, save your money. They told us, go to school, get a job, save your money, buy a house, have your family, and that's it. That is what we were taught. Save your money, put your money in the bank. Little did we know that our money doesn't belong in the bank. Our money belongs in assets. Gold, real estate, businesses, etc., etc. But we were all taught to save our money in the banks, go into debt in education go into debt in education and buy a house and have this big debt and just live like we don't know what the hell is going on in the world. And that is how we are taught within our community, and we are just now trying to break out of that. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. Suzette, no generational wealth. And when I say generational wealth, it's not just about money, it's about thought. A wealth of thought. It is not passed down within the black community. And that is what we are doing right now in this age, while other groups have been doing it for the last 1,000 years. We've only been doing it for the past 10 years. Oh my God, isn't that sad? No. Point 10. So for those, sorry, I went into a tangent. Ontario peoples, I hope you're still here with us. So for those of you who are just joining the stream, who weren't here earlier, I am reviewing Ontario People's Party's policies. It's a political party in Ontario that's going to be contesting the next election. If you're interested in seeing what their policies are, go to ontariopeoplesfront.ca. If they're still here, I'm going to ask them to drop a comment in the comment section so that they can point you towards their website. So I'm still going through their policies. It's just that when we talk about these policies, we go into conversations about what some of these policies mean. Now, the next one is point number 10. Ensure that all Ontario schools enforce an environment free of systematic discrimination for all students and teachers alike, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, or other grounds prohibited by the Ontario Human Rights Code. And sure, all Ontario schools enforce and free of systematic discrimination. Okay, yeah, that's okay, yeah. That's okay. Within the context of the system that we have right now, yes. Demand the decriminalization, this is number 11, of all substances used for bodily consumption and public oversight in a safe supply for all users of such substances in a similar manner that has already been implemented regarding cannabis. The continued criminalization of substances and a lack of safe supply has resulted in the opioid crisis, which has caused many. I agree with that 100%. Ontario People's Front. I agree with decriminalizing all of these substances because it's actually the criminalization of it that causes abuse and creates black markets. So I agree with that 100%. Decriminalize all substances used for bodily consumption, right? And public oversight and a safe supply, sure, fine. If I want to smoke marijuana, leave me alone and let me smoke my marijuana. Okay, guys? Number 12. Demand the total decriminalization of sex work, including the removal of all criminal laws around sex work and immigration provisions that restrict migrant sex workers from working in the industry. This includes the removal of all laws that criminalize sex workers, clients, and third parties. I agree with that. That's number 12. I agree with number 12 100%. And before I move on, I know that number 12, sex work, is a hot topic. Some people might not agree with this. Let me know what you think about number 12. Let me read it again. Demand the total decriminalization of sex work, including the removal of all criminal laws around sex work and immigration provisions that restrict migrant sex workers from working in the industry. This includes the removal of all laws that criminalize sex workers, clients, and third parties. Let me know what you think about it. I agree with number 12. I agree with that totally. Okay, number 13. Move funding designated for vaccine passports into a properly funded one-tier universal healthcare system which guarantees timely access to state. So Ontario People's Front, you know how I feel about that one. You know how I feel about the universal healthcare system and the public healthcare system. It's going to take a lot of convincing. I don't know. I don't think it's possible to convince me to support the public healthcare system. Is here already. I came into this system, so albeit I came into the system not knowing what it was. It's through living here I learned, but it's not up to me to want to change a system that Canadians have had for decades. It's up to the Canadian people to determine what they want to do with this healthcare system and what they don't want to do. At the end of the day, guys, I'm going to be getting my Canadian citizenship soon, right? So soon I can call myself a citizen of Canada soon, but at the same time I am still a Jamaican citizen. So even though I'm here talking to you about all of these policies, telling you I don't like the public healthcare system, telling you I don't like public education system. At the end of the day, something could happen and I disappear out of Canada and I'm gone to Jamaica one day. So, so while I believe in what I am saying, I think it is up to Canadians who were born here, Canadians who lived through all of this, to make the decision on what they want for their country. And if Canadians choose to keep the public healthcare system how it is right now, or if they choose to improve upon it, then really and truly I shouldn't really have any complaints, because I came to this country within this system. Now, number 14, stop the climate change. Number 14 is stop the climate change scam. I'm liking it already. And immediately protect our environment from senseless destruction. Climate change is a scam based upon the creation of targets that policymakers know will never be achieved. Its purpose is to exploit a public conscience which desires to protect our environment. Notably, climate change rhetoric has been used by elites to hijack the environmental movement from a focus away from pollution into cynical carbon trading as if pollution is a tradable commodity. Furthermore, climate change, which is the result of cyclical changes in the Earth's position relative to the sun, cannot be easily separated from alleged human-made climate change. Therefore, the most rational approach on environmental stewardship in Ontario is to redress destructive pollution at all levels and not on carbon footprints. Okay, I have no complaints. I have no complaints on that one. Number 15 is to reform. So Suzette here says the public healthcare system, which I assume you were talking about, was trashed before COVID. Right? Hallway medicine. So number 15, reform Ontario's justice system, which has been corrupted by lawyers and judges focused on serving those Ontarians who have the most money at the expense of underprivileged Ontarians subjected to onerous legal fees that prevent them from availing their rights in Ontario courts of laws. These barriers are made worse by difficult to understand statutes for anyone who has not gone to law school and those whose rights have been infringed. All statutes and laws in the province of Ontario must be rewritten in ordinary language to better enable all Ontarians who seek to be self-litigant to reaffirm their rights. And this I agree with 100%. The Ontario justice system, as a matter of fact, I don't think there's any justice system out there in the world that's fair. The justice system generally favors those who have money. If you have enough money, you could beat a case in court. But if you don't have enough money, then you could suffer in jail trying to get bail. It's a ridiculous system. So Ontario People's Front, I definitely support number 15. Number 16. Ensure that all Ontarians who cannot afford lawyer fees in court litigation should also be provided access to a public defender whose fees will be regulated to ensure affordability for all. I agree with that as well. So DG13 says legal documents need legal change. It's 11 p.m. What? How long have I been live? What's going on? Did I travel through time? I went live at 9:30 and I know it's 11 p.m. I traveled through time. Whoa. Okay. Number 17, free tuition for first-year students to enable all Ontarians, regardless of income, to have an opportunity to experience university and community college life in order to be inspired to continue the pursuit of a higher education. This will support more innovation in Ontario by expanding the knowledge base of our economy through students who have the desire to expand their horizons with higher education. Now, of course, I think you all know what I'm going to say already. So education, healthcare, they are not free. There's no such thing, in my opinion, as free education or free tuition. It has to come from somewhere. And I know why the education system in this country is so expensive in the first place. I understand that many of these things, when political parties or politicians or regular people, because most of you here would have said it, I have said it before, before I was enlightened to these kinds of ideologies that I now have. People who say they want free education, free healthcare, it is coming from a good place. But the question is it practical, and do the persons who ask for these things understand where money comes from, right? Understands how money works, understands how it affects the economy, understand how it affects inflation, and understands how it affects debt. So I always try to find a solution, alternative to what we define as free healthcare or free education, because there is not only one solution for everything. If I even come to you with a solution, I'm quite certain that there is a better idea out there that doesn't pressure the pockets of Canadians, doesn't send us further into debt, and does not balloon the inflation rate. There's always a way. Nordic countries, so if for example Sweden has their free health, no sorry, I think Sweden had moved to sort of a more of a private form of healthcare system, but Sweden still have their free education system. But here's the thing, you I hope I'm Shabradar, you can go to Sweden as an immigrant and get free education. You can. But here's the thing. You are going to pay so much money in rent. You're going to pay so much money in like for books, for food, cost of living, all of that stuff. It is so expensive. It is more expensive to go to school in Sweden than to go to school in America. Even though Sweden has free education. Think about that. Right? Something has to give, always. Should people who don't have money be denied access to education? No. I think that everyone should be able to access education. Right? How you do it is by implementing a situation that reduces the cost of education. Right now, all of our kids, my kid is going to elementary school right now for free. He's gonna go to high school for free. But if you go on the Ontario, the government of Ontario website and look at the cost of this education system, your head is going to explode. You're gonna say, I can't believe it. I became aware of this 4 years ago when I looked at it. Our taxes are not funding the education system in Ontario. Our taxes are funding the debt caused by the education system in Ontario. Our education system is funded by debt. It is unsustainable. And this is what is driving up inflation and stealing our wealth, stealing our savings and our earnings. The monies I could have been able, so let's say I work $50,000 per year in 2020, right? Now in 2022, $50,000 is worth nothing. But at the same time, goods and services over time, technology, the cost of technology reduces over time, right? Of course, inflation will bring the price up, right? But the cost of technology reduces over time. What I want to see is an economic system where $50,000 today in 2022 is worth $50,000 in 2025. You see, when you have a system like that, we are able to keep our earnings and keep our savings, and we're now able to afford things. Because as the cost of food so-called increases because of inflation, our salaries devalue. Look at us right now. Look at the cost of gas. Look at the cost of food. Look at the cost of light bill. Look at your property taxes. My property taxes, Jody, are you right there? How much is our property taxes for this year? My property taxes is 5,000 Canadian dollars for the year. $5,000. And my income isn't moving. It's going nowhere. It is only being devalued over time. While the cost of living increases, that is the source of poverty. That is the source of poverty, and we need to address that source before we do anything. Which is why when I sent the letter opposing the UBI, the Universal Basic Income, instead of straight up bashing it, I said to them, hey, let's focus on the root cause of why we are poor in the first place. Let's focus on that. Let's fix that. After we fix that, let's revisit the conversation of a universal basic income. Let's revisit the conversation of more free this and more free that. And let us see if then it is needed. Because I know for a fact that if this criminal international banking system is brought down and Canada, all of these other countries move towards using real money, not fake fiat currency that steals our wealth, but real money that doesn't devalue or increase in value too much over time, we will be able to keep the value of our earnings. We will be able to maintain our wealth. And over time, as competition in society increases, let's say that, what if I was the only person in the world creating books right now, right? Another company comes in and they start making more books like these, right? Until you have 1,000 companies competing against each other to make books like these. The cost will fall while the value of my earnings and my savings remain the same. It's simple math. And that is how we get to the root cause of poverty in this country and many other countries in the world. And of course, there are other moving parts, which is education. People have to learn how money works. People have to learn about taxes. People have to learn, how about entrepreneurship, how they can start businesses, how they can do freelancing. People have to learn these things as well. Right? And these are, I know that there are some schools that teach these things, but most schools usually do not. If you're just joining the live stream, I'm talking about Ontario People's Front policies on that they're going into the next June Ontario elections with. Number 18, support the development of high-speed rail linking major city rail. A comma is missing. Support the development of high-speed rail linking major cities across Ontario with the participation of the airline industry to reduce ozone pollution by air and road traffic, principal sources of pollution. Correspondingly, stop the further expansion of Ontario highways, are needless source of pollution that also destroys agricultural lands and environmentally sensitive ecological habitats. Support the development of high-speed rail link in major cities. Okay, I can agree with that. I don't have a problem with that as long as government force is not involved. I don't want government trying to force me to not drive my car. I don't want government trying to force me to buy a gas car or force me to buy an electric vehicle. And they usually do that by raising taxes on you. They want you to go on the train, so they say, okay, you know what? Because I want you to go on the train, I'm going to put a 20% tax on gas so that you can't afford to buy gas. So you're forced to use the train. That's the kind of thing that I don't like. I hate it. Government force. That's what the carbon tax is. The carbon tax is government force. Tax you on fuel so that so that you can go buy LED bulbs, so that you can go buy electric vehicle. No, use education. Let people decide what the best avenue is, the best mode of transportation, what they want to eat, what they want to. Let people decide. So I like number 18 so long as government force is not involved. Yes, let's build those high-speed rail linking major cities, and make it efficient, make it affordable, so that Canadians can choose to use it. Right? Don't make it inefficient, difficult to use, but at the same time you make Canadians' lives difficult by putting taxes on fuel, putting taxes on cars, because you want to force them to use the inefficient system. You get what I'm saying? That's how government has been operating for a long time. It's ridiculous, right? They create this. They have this broken stapler. Stapler is broken, like, oh, but they want you to use the stapler, right? So they put some taxes on something else to force you to use the broken stapler. Right? So that's what I don't like to see in government. Number 19. I have 2 more to go. Yeah, so let it sell itself. Right? And if it doesn't sell itself, then you've wasted the taxpayers' dollars. So make sure that you do a cost benefit analysis. Don't just go up there and build something because it sounds nice. And then when you build it, nobody uses it. And then when nobody uses it, you want to force them to use it because you spent money on it. It's ridiculous. I'm on Ontario People's Front's website, OntarioPeoplesFront.ca. I'm on their website and I'm reading all of their policies. And I'm telling you what I think about them, and I'm asking you guys as well what you think about some of these policies. So there are 2 more after this. Number 19. De-amalgamate any city which was forcibly amalgamated under former Premier Mike Harris based upon any substantive evidence that the ability of citizens to have a say in local affairs and decisions that affect their quality of living on a municipal level has been subverted. I agree with that, Ontario People's Front. I agree with that. But I think that if the city, if a city is going to be de-amalgamated, it should be done in a way that it's not amalgamated again. What we don't want is political parties coming into power and just redrawing borders all willy-nilly whenever they feel like, and whenever it becomes politically beneficial for them, right? And that's how the liberals, the federal liberals, keep winning the election, simply because of Ontario, the GTA, Toronto is giving them these seats, right? Because of how the lines are drawn. Right? So these political parties, they come into government and they draw lines to benefit themselves based on where a majority of their voters are. So what we need, if we are going to de-amalgamate the city, we do that in an equitable manner. And we do that in a way that is not going to be changed again, which means you need some kind of legislation. I don't know, maybe create some kind of provincial charter or a provincial constitution that says that you can't redraw these lines unless the Ontarians come and they do and they vote on it, and it has to be a majority to redraw these lines. We don't want to give politicians the full power to simply redraw political lines anytime they feel or anywhere they feel to redraw the lines, right? But I do support number 19, redrawing those lines, but to be equitable. Number 20. After this, we have one more. Reform the Ontario Municipal Board, which has become totally corrupted by the interests of developers over the rights of communities. Okay, so I don't know much about that, so I can't comment on it, but it sounds good. It sounds good. I have no reason to oppose that, because I know that developers, of course, are whispering in the ears of mayors and councillors and so on and so forth. So I have nothing negative to say about this. The last one, number 21, ensure transparency and accountability in the awarding of all provincial government contracts and require that any institution seeking a government contract affirms the Ontario Human Rights Code. Okay, I agree with everything up until you got to affirming the Ontario Human Rights Code. I would agree with it in theory. In theory, I would agree with it, but here's my problem, because I believe that the Ontario Human Rights Code in itself is discriminatory. If you look at Canada's Charter of Rights, it protects freedom of conscience, and it protects I think it's freedom of conscience or freedom of thought. I can't remember, but the Ontario Charter of Rights protects that. But the Ontario Human Rights Code,
I don't understand.
Hey
Siri, I would agree with it, but here's my problem, because I believe that Ontario's Human Rights Code in it.
I wasn't talking to you. Stop talking.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, I believe that Ontario Human Rights Code is discriminatory, because the Charter of Rights is supposed to protect freedom of thought or freedom of conscience, right? But the Human Rights Code does not protect freedom of thought or freedom of conscience. It does not protect political ideology, right? So the Ontario Human Rights Code, as it is right now, is incomplete, and I think it's discriminatory, right? But in essence, I do agree with number 21 that we should ensure transparency and accountability in awarding all provincial government contracts and require, well, of course, if the Human Rights Code is not discriminatory, require that any institution seeking a government contract affirms the Ontario Human Rights Code. Ontario People's Party, are you still here? So, okay, DG13, thank you for joining me for how many hours? I didn't realize how fast the time was flying, but it flew, and thank you for being here. We learned a lot today from each other, and I'm glad for that. So the interim leader of the Ontario People's Front is Ray Samuels, and they will be contesting the provincial elections this coming June. Good, they're still here. If you want to learn more about the Ontario People's Front, go on their website, ontariopeoplesfront.ca. Now let me remind you again, you might support the Conservative Party, you might support New Blue, you might support Ontario People's Front, or even the Ontario Libertarian Party, but keep in mind that you will never agree with 100%. You will never agree 100% with anyone 100% of the time. So there might be something on Ontario People's Front website which I've seen myself, or New Blue, or Libertarian Party, or Conservative. You might see something that you don't like. It doesn't appeal to you, right? You will always find that. It does not mean that you must disregard the political party, right? Because we all don't share the same views, we all don't think the same way, but we can all come together under a common understanding of what we are trying to do. Because Ontario People's Front asked me a question: how are we going to stop this New World Order agenda? So I have a plan, but I don't want to say my plan and corrupt this video. I don't want to corrupt this video, right? Because this video is about Ontario People's Front, so I don't want to corrupt it, right? But I do have a plan on how to do that. So please head to OntarioPeoplesFront.ca, review their policies. If you want, so you can follow them there, Ontario People's Front. You can follow their social media page, engage in conversation with them, because I definitely am going to do so. Because I'm going to call you. I'm going to try to convince you to do something about the public health and the education policies and so on and so forth. Right? I'm going to try to see if I can bring my best argument to convince you that there is another way to do it, and you can even bring your best argument to convince me that the way you're doing it is the correct way. And that is how we come together. We debate, we talk, we communicate until we come to a common understanding of how we want to execute some of these things. Right? Oh my God. From 9:30 and it's 11:30 right now. I did not think that I was going to be live for this long. So guys, I am going to head to my bed right now and close my eyes. I know you can see my eyes twitching because I am getting tired. So thank you for joining me for the last couple of hours. Some of you were here for the whole entire stream. Thank you very much for being there. Remember, follow Ontario's People's Front. If you don't like Ontario People's Front, go to Ontario Libertarian. If you don't like Ontario Libertarian, go to what do they call it? New Blue. Even though I do have some problems with some of the stuff that New Blue says, and maybe another day I can go live and tell you about the stuff that New Blue kind of lost me on a bit. Yeah, Ontario People's Front lost me on something, but as I said, we are not going to agree 100% of the time. But we all have to work together and try to see if we can come to a common understanding of how to execute some of these policies. No problem, Ontario People's Front. No problem. By the way, I don't know who's behind Ontario People's Front. Who is it? Is it Ray, or is it Ray Samuels, or is it John Stoke? Who's behind the account right now? So again, Ray Samuels is the interim leader. John Stoke, remind me what position John Stoke is again within the party. I don't know if they left. They leave. Oh, okay. So it's yes, as in it's okay. It's Raymond. Okay. It's Raymond. So Raymond is behind the account. So Raymond, if you guys want, you can send Raymond a message on his Instagram. Talk to him about his policies. Talk to him about what you like, what you don't like. Talk to him about something that you like to see in his policies, because at the end of the day, you're the voter. Okay, so John Stoke looks like a campaign organizing. You're the voter. So you need to find out if Ontario People's Front relates to you, and if you can work with them in the upcoming June election. Remember, we got to prevent Andrea Horwath. We have to prevent Stephen Del Duca from becoming premier. And while doing that, we have to ensure that Doug Ford doesn't become premier either. We have to work together. I would love to see Ontario People's Front, the New Blue, and Ontario Libertarian parties and all the independents in one room together. I would love to see that. Still working on it. Let us see if it will happen. Good night, guys.